Hello and welcome to the Hellraiser blog, brought to you today from the Gallops in Newmarket. So, today's Hellraiser blog, we're going to look at Billy Joe Saunders against Saul Alvarez, also known as Canelo. Big fight, an absolute gem of a fight that I've been looking forward to. I've watched Billy Joe Saunders all the way through the amateurs, his whole career as a professional, and he can be quite frustrating in the sense that he often just does like the bare minimum, or he coasts through if he's winning, but he doesn't really take any risks, he doesn't step up the gears, and he just makes sure that he wins without risking anything, which is, that's intelligent, that's sensible. But you don't always get the best out of fighters when they're doing that. You don't see them at their best, and the opponents he's had often haven't been good enough to stretch Billy Joe Saunders, so we haven't seen his best yet. Saul Alvarez will definitely stretch him. Saul Alvarez, needs no introduction. He's probably the pound for pound best boxer in the world at the moment. He cuts off the ring. He has like a one size fits all tactic for whoever he's boxing, and no one has found the solution to it yet. He comes in very close, quick feet, comes in, he throws thunderous punches to the body, hurtful punches to the body early on, slows his opponent's feet down, and that's really intriguing for fighting Billy Joe Saunders, because Billy Joe Saunders is the antidote. Billy Joe Saunders has quick feet as well. He likes to fight at range. He likes to vary his shots, vary the pace, vary the directions that he attacks from and the angles he finds, and that's really interesting to me, because I think it will be interesting when Billy Joe moves. Alvarez is going to gobble that space up, but I think Billy Joe, if we sort of know what Canelo's going to do, because he does the same thing with anyone. He comes in close, cuts the ring off, and tries to smoke these guys out. Now, Billy Joe here, right? Firstly, he can't stand and fight with Canelo. That would be suicide. That would be like kamikaze. He's just not going to last with Canelo, and I'm sure that he's not going to do that. But he's not going to be able to run and keep it at long range constantly through the fight. It's how long. What I think Billy Joe has to do here is to take the centre of the ring as early as possible. In the first round, he needs to be literally, as the bell goes, standing in the centre of the ring. He needs to take that centre of the ring and keep it for as long as possible by throwing straight shots, uppercuts, feinting, forcing Canelo to respect that space. Canelo is going to walk him down. Canelo is going to slip the jabs, and he's going to try and push Billy Joe off the centre of the ring. But I think the strategy that I would pick for Billy Joe in this fight would be to try and hold that centre of the ring for as long as possible. Get in there, because that buys him time, and he can then possibly outbox Canelo while he's doing that. And then it's just a question of, can he win enough rounds? I'm not saying he can, but if he can then win enough rounds to take as much of a lead as he can, and just hold on to it, Canelo obviously is going to realise, and even against fairly modest opponents, we saw him against Avni Yildirim, same tactic. He knows that most opponents cannot last with the pressure that he brings. The thing is, you can't really compare someone like Avni Yildirim to Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders has the movement, like I say, the variety, the angles that he finds, the very fast hands that he has, and he's a strong puncher to go with it. Maybe not the most concussive, but the build-up of punches. And when you've got someone like Canelo, who's going to be trying to sort of slip and slide his way inside the jab and counter, it's a lot easier to do when you've got guys that are slow on their feet, which Billy Joe Saunders is not. Billy Joe Saunders is fast on his feet. He's going to be changing the angles. He's going to be causing all sorts of problems for Canelo. And that actually, to me, it's a mouth-watering fight, because you're going to see here Billy Joe Saunders has been quite frustrating, I'd say, for much of his career, because he tends to coast. When he knows that he's winning, he takes minimum risks. And for a boxing person, you look at that, you think, that's intelligent. That's smart boxing. That's using your brain. You want to optimise your earnings and climb that ladder. You've got to look at it like that as a long-term thing. But Is that going to be enough against Canelo? I've got a feeling Canelo gets inside his jab from about round 4 onwards. And a problem that I have with Billy Joe is that he hasn't really had that many high-level fights, like top opponents. Not necessarily his fault, because maybe the fights couldn't, the opponents weren't there, or the fights for whatever reason couldn't be made. But I mean, one thing that I would say doesn't bode particularly well, if you watch the fight with Chris Eubank, and I'm sure Billy Joe Saunders is much fitter now than he was when he boxed Eubank, but in the second half of the fight, when Eubank started putting pressure on Billy Joe ran out of steam, basically. I mean, he outboxed Eubanks, but he did run out of steam. Well, the pressure that Canelo brings is far, far superior, even if Billy Joe, I'm sure now, is fitter and stronger by miles than what he was when he boxed Eubank. He's a different creature in many ways. But it's just the fact that when I saw Billy Joe under pressure in that fight, he wilted, he started to come apart. Certainly the pace and the quality of his work went down. And here you're going to see on a higher level the similar sort of mindset, I think, from Canelo, who only really knows how to fight one way. Cut the ring off, get inside. These murderous punches that come to the body. That's exactly what I expect from him in this fight. And Canelo often, we see him and he just walks through people. I don't see him doing that with Billy Joe. No chance of that, I don't think. I think Billy Joe's going to come to fight. It's his big moment, career that he's built towards for a long time. I mean, he was built up, with Frank Warren, very carefully and astutely, and it was all gearing towards this big fight. So it probably doesn't go down too well, I would imagine, with the Warrens, and now he has this big fight. It's not on his show, but that's boxing sometimes, and I'm sure Frank's big enough to sort of to ride that wave. But now it's all or nothing for Billy Joe. This is his moment. He needs to shine on this day. He needs to get everything right. We need to see 100 out of 100 Billy Joe Saunders. He can't afford to have a lacklustre performance, because he will get stopped if he's off colour at all. He had an extensive amateur career. That's a good sign normally for guys that travel. I mean, all guys that boxed internationally that have travelled, been in like the Olympics and stuff like that. Two things you can say about them. I mean, one, they all make weight. You never know if they're going to be a good pro or not, but they can all make weight, and they can all travel because they've had such experience of doing that. So I'm not worried about Billy Joe Saunders going away from home. The size of the ring, there was a big sort of hoo-ha about that. I think it's very pertinent, the size of the ring. I mean, it's very important, because it massively advantages Canelo to have a small ring, and advantages Saunders to have a big ring. So I don't think that was just hype. I understand all of that, but this is Las Vegas. I think you've got to be real. The ring's going to be heavily padded. They're going to do everything they can to help Canelo, and Canelo doesn't really need help to beat people. He's a beast of a man. His feet are fast himself, and this is what I expect to happen. I hope that Billy Joe can take and hold that centre of the ring, and that's what I think he actually will. I think his tactics will be early on to take the centre of the ring, but not to stand there and fight. He'll take the centre of the ring, and as he'll try and lure Canelo in, and as Canelo comes in closer, Billy Joe will sort of veer off to the sides and pick angles and try and keep that going for as long as possible. Canelo, his game plan is almost like a one-size-fits-all. He will come in, he will be throwing these monstrous punches to the body, trying to take the legs away from Billy Joe, and hoping to stop him in the second half of the fight. One thing that I would say with Billy Joe, I don't think he's had the level of experience that probably I would have liked to see him in his career, in his professional career so far. I'd love him to win this, but I think second half of the fight Canelo catches up with him, and we'll start putting that heat on him, and that's where I think the level of opposition that Billy Joe hasn't had will be a problem, because really I'd like to see Billy Joe Saunders more active against higher level opponents. Not hard fights every time, but just had a few more tests that would have prepared him more, because I think there's going to be a lot of heat on him in the second half of the fight, and it's going to cause him to dig very deep. But listen, I'm certainly going to cross my fingers for Billy Joe Saunders. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I've known him for quite a long while. He's always been come across like a decent guy to me. I think he's people sort of watched some of the clips, and I've seen those clips, things that he's done where I myself think, well, why did you do that? You hear Billy Joe saying people don't like me because I'm a gypsy. I don't think people don't like him because he's a gypsy. I think people frown upon the way he behaves sometimes because he doesn't do himself justice. I don't think he's a nasty person. I don't think he does it on purpose. I think that side of him has actually held him back. I think it stopped him from maybe having the high profile, because this is a massive fight. This is the biggest fight any British guy's had for a year maybe. It's a huge fight. It's a huge opportunity for Billy Joe, and well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for him. The prediction, I'm going to go for Canelo on points. I think Canelo will have too much in the second half of the fight, and for that reason I go for Canelo on points. But please, if you enjoyed watching the blog, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you again very soon on the Hellraiser blog. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye bye.